I'm just gonna get the auxiliary belt off so we can eventually get to the cam belt. Because we're gonna need to replace that because this engine's been sitting for way too long. So we're gonna change the cam belt, all the bearings, all the tensioners, this belt. We're gonna buy a shoulder belt because we're gonna remove the AC pump. So yeah, let's get started. And in order to get the timing cover off, you need to remove these two bolts. I believe they are 30. Yep, they are 30. T30, Torx 30. And then there's, I don't know if you can see that, yeah. There's a latch here, and another one on the other side. You just pull it off like that. Don't forget to screw in the screws, so you know where they are. Now we're on the front again, and we have a 10mm bolt right here in the center, which we're gonna remove. It's kind of a weird one, so don't lose it. And you can just pull it off. You pull it upwards and out. And again, don't forget to put the bolts back. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna zero out this engine. It's always a good practice to put the engine in zero, which means you put cylinder 1 in top dead center, which is at the top of the cylinder, and the camshafts should be in the compression stroke. Should be markings on the camshafts somewhere. You want to look for these little lines. There's a tiny groove here, which is a marking. This marking should point straight up. And there's another one right here. If you put the timing belt cover back on here, you can see it has 2 holes. These holes should line up with the markings on the camshaft gears. We need to turn the crank a little bit. I don't know what size this is. It's a number 30. So I have a number 30 here. You just put that on there. Turn the engine clockwise until we hit top dead center of this. We want to make sure that these match up here. I'm going to draw on here. That is where the marking is, and that is where that marking is. Now we're just going to turn it about right there. There's also a marking on the crank. I'm going to try to show it to you guys. I'm just going to do it like this. I'm going to circle where the marking is in this picture, and that marking should line up with the marking on the block, which is right there. Okay, so now we have the engine zeroed out. Next thing we're going to do is let go of the tensioner. No, we're not going to let go of the tensioner. We're going to let go of the tension on the cam belt. Okay, so we're going to need a 12mm socket. I'm just going to bolt this central bolt right here. Just loosening it a little bit. And that should take the tension off the belt, which it has. We can actually go ahead and take this all the way out. There we go. And now we're going to remove the pulley, the auxiliary belt pulley, I believe it's called. Not really sure. It's a 30mm nut, and I'm going to use air tools on this one. Next, we're going to remove these 4, and they are definitely not 12, so now we have a number 10. Yeah, right. Oh, no way. Wow. I thought we were going to have to use a pulley, but I guess not. Just wanted to show you guys the markings on the crankshaft right here. This is the marking that was so hard to see from up top, so we can see it a lot better here. You see, these two should line up. They don't really line up right now because I used the air gun. Okay, so now we can just take the cam belt off. No problem. Okay, maybe a little bit of problem. There's a rubber thing here. You might want to get rid of that. It'll get the belt out a lot easier. And you look at this belt. I mean, this belt is no good. It's shaped like it was. You can just throw this away. Okay, so now we're gonna focus on the exhaust side of the engine. We're gonna remove the turbo, a few bits and pieces. We're gonna get rid of the water pipes, the oil cooler. We're gonna take everything basically that you can see here off of the engine block. I'm gonna start by removing the turbo because I know I just put this on here for safekeeping, so it's only held with one bolt. Yeah, let's get rid of that. Man, this turbo is not good. Look at this turbo right here. See right there? Right down there. There's a crack. And there's multiple cracks on top here as well, inside. Especially that one. That doesn't feel good at all. Yeah, I think we're gonna junk this turbo. So we just start by... It's always 12, what the fuck? Alright, so let's remove this heat shield. It's a number 12. Get rid of that. This is a support bracket for the manifold. If you're gonna run this engine in like a straight application instead of the transverse, you need to take off this coolant line. This normally goes to the radiator, which would be over here in the Volvo V70. But since we're gonna put this in a 740, you need to cut it about here and turn it so it comes out here, so you can put it to the radiator, which will be here. So we're gonna need to modify this. Maybe use the one from the 960, because I believe that will have the correct bend. But we're gonna find out that pretty soon. You guys see the bolt? It's right in there. There we go. Now it's time to remove it from the head. 2 bolts up here. There we go. So now we can remove the pipe. Okay, we're going to remove this screw. All right. That's the water pipe gone. Okay, so now we're going to remove the oil cooler. It's held in place by 4 T40 Torx. Oh boy, I was actually not expecting that. I'm just gonna plug these up. Okay, so the next item on the list is to get rid of this drive shaft mounting bracket. So we are not gonna use that anymore. We have 12mm on the bottom here and 14mm on the top. Get rid of that. Next, we're going to remove this water pipe. It runs out of here. And I want the whole thing. It's 22. Try with 19. Yes. It's a cone thread on these, by the way. Next thing to remove will be this supply pipe, the oil feed line over the turbo. That is 19. Yep. Next, we're going to be removing this pressure pipe because it's not going to go this way, so we don't need it. There we go. Okay, so what I did just now is I removed these two sensors that were sitting here. One is a three-point contact and one is a two-point contact. I'm a little bit confused as to where they go. One goes to the crank sensor, and I believe the other one goes to the cam sensor. So, yeah, that is a weird placement. Right next to the starter. That can cause problems. Just gonna get rid of these. Moving on, I'm going to remove this pipe right here, which I believe goes to the crank ventilation. So we'll just unscrew that. Take this whole thing out. And I believe this is a 17, and it is. While we're over here, I'm just going to go ahead and remove this hose here. It's cut off, so I just want to get rid of it. Oh, wow, that is really stuck on there. Oh, that's rusty. And now we just move on to this side. Oh boy, if you look at that, that's a lot of stuff to remove. Okay, so I'm actually going to start on the top here. We're just going to take a Torx T30 and we're going to crack all of these loose. There we go. Remove this cover. There we go. Anyway, we're just going to start removing all these, the whole harness here. This harness is terrible. Look at this. It's just disintegrating. We're going to have to redo this somehow if we're even going to use it. And then we have two grounding points. So we have one here, and we have one over here. And with that done, we can remove the entire harness out of the way. There we go. And now we're gonna remove the harness to the injectors. So we start by popping this off. And then you just simply, can you guys see? No? And to remove these, you just press this little metal thing, clip, retaining clip, just pull it up. And then we just have a The Torx T25. It's always 25 on these Volvos. Almost always. 25, 30, 40. That's about it. So now that entire harness is gone. So now we just continue removing stuff. And I'm gonna start by removing this pipe here, this plastic pipe that runs to the throttle body, because we're not going to need that either. We're going to need most things that we're removing right now, but I just want to clean it up and make sure everything's okay. But we're going to remove this pipe anyway, and in order to do that, we need to remove these two contactors first. Now we move on, and we're going to remove the hose clamp. And there we go. So right now we're just gonna disconnect the electronic throttle body, because we're not going to use an electronic throttle body. Maybe in the future, but that's for right now, no. I'm just going to unbolt that, because we need to get this intake off. Next thing to remove is this dipstick, I believe. But I'm actually going to go ahead and remove this AC pump hose, because it's in the way. And to remove this one, it's a 6mm hex. Oh, that is tight. Oh, that is tight. I don't want to break my tool. Nope. Well, I'm not going to get that off, so I'm just going to take the whole pump off. In order to remove the pump, you simply disconnect the connector that engages it, and we have 4 12mm bolts. These actually come out very smoothly. Okay, so what I'm looking at now is where to go from here. So let's start by removing this bracket right here. It is held on by a 14mm bolt. Just remove that. It should become loose. And screw it back. Next couple of screws, the sensors. We're going to remove these 2 knock sensors and also this ground right here. 12mm bolt. And I believe these are 12 as well. And the other one is way in there. So it's right in there. And there you go. 2 knock sensors removed. I don't know why these are different colors, but at least now I can remember that the brighter one was in the rear of the engine. That's good. Moving on. Next, we're going to have to remove these contacts from the alternator. This one's simple enough. I believe that does look like a 13. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 12. But it is actually a 13. Wow. It is what you think it is for once. That's nice for a change. Put that bolt back. Now we follow that wire. And we have another one right down there. Then we have a bolt behind the dipstick. Also a 12. The engine harness is held in by these two 10mm bolts right here. We're going to remove now. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to remove this entire intake. And in order to do that, we need to start with a dipstick. There we go. This one's real simple. Just remove this and pop it out. Allegedly. There you go. So, that's the dipstick removed anyway. So now we're going to remove the intake. Okay, so there's a line going right to the intake right there that we need to remove. It is a very weird thing. I have never seen anything like that before. I hope we can get it out without taking the alternator off, but I don't think so. So let's just take that off. And at this stage, the alternator is held in with just one bolt up there. And I'm gonna guess that it's a 12. But now, we can easily remove this one. Yep, it's a 17. That's very oily. Must be some kind of crankcase ventilation. Oh, I see now. This banjo, I don't know if it's called banjo in England, but this bolt anyway goes into the intake, and this water line just wraps around the fitting to the intake. Huh. Well, that's quite a different approach. This doesn't look very good though. Needs a proper cleaning. I can tell you that the hole is completely gunked up. Now it's time to remove the intake, and it's held in by maybe, I don't know, 10mm bolts. So we're just gonna have a go at it. Okay, so it turns out I can't reach the bolt way in here, so I'm just gonna make it easier for myself and start by removing this electronic throttle body. Since we're not gonna use this anyway, it's gonna have to go. And it's held in by 4 10mm bolts. And there you go. Oh no, how did I miss that? Of course, you need to remove this crank breather first. There we go. That was a lot easier. Okay, so now I'm going to take this whole bracket off. thing we're gonna remove is this oil trap, because I know these things usually go bad. So I just want to remove it, check it out, make sure everything's okay with it, maybe flush it. We're just gonna take the whole system off. There we go. Okay, so now we have these two 10mm bolts. All the hose connections are taken off. So the whole thing should come off. There we go. Doesn't look very fresh. It's all gucked up in here. And it's all gucked up in here too. We're gonna need to clean that up. Okay, you guys, that's all I have for today. I'm running out of time. It's almost 12 o'clock and I gotta get to bed. But it's been nice. Look at this. We got it all stripped. Just got a few more parts to take off. And then we can go through all of these parts individually. Make sure they're okay. Put the engine back together. Maybe give it a little clean first. Come up with a plan of how we're gonna do this. Like, are we gonna use these coils, for example? What are we gonna do with the VVT? You know, things like that. We definitely need to clean this gunk out. Look at that. That is just crazy. That is no ventilation at all. Not good.